Ephesians 4:18 and 19. They are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. Having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity, and they are full of greed. It's an interesting expression Paul uses. He says they are darkened in their understanding. First of all, because of this powerful selfism that I've been describing. It's talented people pushing themselves forward to control. Some as military leaders who wanted to have the legions at their backs. Some wanted to defeat neighboring nations so as to accumulate wealth for themselves and for those who followed them. Some wanted to rise in political power, and usually that was the path by somebody rising as a powerful soldier. They had the ability to bring in wealth to the Roman nation. They had the power to control because they had loyal troops who would enforce their will, and that's how you became Caesar, the one who was at the top. That's how they could make monuments to themselves, whether it was a statue with their name on it, or great buildings that they constructed, or all the things that are left behind to mark somebody's place. It was all done in the name of the glory of Rome and of themselves. And in truth, they were trying to feather their own nest, just as we do today. But in the end, it's a strategy of total destruction, because there's no cooperation, there's no connection. There is no willingness to compromise for the good of everybody. And so our human wills, just in Roman times as they are in these days, we are darkened by our selfishness and our self-centeredness. I read a quote one time, and I've never been able to verify that this is a true quote, but it was supposed to be Napoleon Bonaparte, after he completed most of his European campaigns, was in control of almost everything, and was preparing foolishly to try to go take over Russia. Which leads me to beg the question, why? Do you really want that? I mean, really. But he did. And he said himself, now at last I come to the place that all that is left to me is pure egoism. He said it in French, okay? I can't speak that. But what he says is true. All of these things he's accomplished. Once he's won it all, what do you do? To sit around and be self-centered and more self-centered and get more stuff and then more entertainment and more of the things you want? How much is enough for a person who's trying to get ahead and who experiences worth by overcoming and gathering and conquering? Where do you ever stop? There's no peace in that, in having more and more and more all the time. That's a darkening of understanding of self-centeredness. You see, we have this problem of being ignorant of the truth and of what really is the value because of the hardening of our hearts. That's a fascinating phrase because it means to build up callus on your hands, like a farmer does by using a shovel or tossing hay or whatever it is he's doing. He builds these calluses that protect his hand, or some of us lose them and then we get blisters. Guilty. I gotta confess, I got this blister through a pair of leather gloves. Now that's a soft hand. Oh yeah. Not callous this guy. Okay? But we become callous by rubbing against things, by being abrased by them, and they irritate us. But what Paul's saying is not always a good thing, especially when it comes to your conscience, to your heart. When you become used to things that are wrong and destructive, you begin to ignore them. You begin to accept them as normal. You don't even notice that they are there. And so we are able to hurt one another without the slightest feeling of it. It's true of our hearts. It's true of our psychological state, our social state, our emotional state. We become hard to the things that are wrong and hurtful around us. And so we continue to do them. It's like we armor ourselves from the pain so that we can go out and do the things that we want to do and never feel it. But in that moment, we shut the door to our contact with God. We push away the touch of His Spirit that reminds us that we are loved and that there's more to this world than what we can gather at the moment. There's more to this life than having what somebody else doesn't. There's more to this life than taking what somebody else has for ourselves. There is God that we need to know. But we're left in ignorance of it when we become hardened in our lives and in our hearts become ignorant of God. And Paul says this, and the result is that the world has given itself over to sensuality. And that's a word in their language that means to be consumed by tasting, touching, having, possessing, experiencing everything. Just this overwhelming drive. Some years ago, there was a commercial on TV. Perhaps you saw it. It had Mick Jagger, Rolling Stones. And it was his line, and what he had to say, too much is never enough. You remember that one? Too much is never enough. And if that ever expressed what Mick Jagger believed in, it certainly did. And it expresses exactly what Paul is talking about, this idea of too much is never enough. You must have more. You must have it now. You must have it immediately. This is about using up the world for our momentary pleasure, our comfort, our hope, to assuage our ego and build us up. And it plays itself out like this. 3 words Paul uses. He says sensuality. Sensuality is a lifestyle that puts sin on display. It's a boastful, a prideful thing. It's like a wrecking ball in the world that destroys. It's about displaying our shame. And the more shocking it is, the more offensive the behavior is, the higher it's placed as a way of expressing this attitude of life. That nothing matters to me except what I want right now in this place. It's a persona for our stars. It's the content of songs. It's the nature of the movies that are out there. It's the nature of the other category, this thing called rap. I can't put it in music, sorry. Not music, sorry. But Paul also says that we have a generation of consumers that reach out to this. He says sensuality is part of this display of evil. Secondly, it's impurity. That's the determination to indulge in things that are unclean, immoral, and hurtful. To be a part of everything that is against God and against God's direction in life. And the third one is greed. The having more, the consuming more, gathering more, to be consumed by the desire to possess, to own, to hold, and never let it go. And it's never quite enough. That good old quote from John D. Rockefeller. Once again, I'm not really sure that this is a real quote, but it was ascribed to him. Somebody asked him how much would be enough, and his answer was just a little bit more. Just a little bit more, and that's how we live. It's never quite enough. There has to be something else to gather up. What Paul is describing is this obsessiveness of having more, whether it's consumption of alcohol or the bigger and the better job, the better home, that the family can have this or do that, that the community could be like this. Everything is not enough. We want more and more and more. And because of that, we lose our sensitivity to the presence of God, the needs of the people around us, the hopes that those around us have. Instead of focusing on all of us prospering, it becomes all about me. And it's a dry and a difficult world. Because the habit of grasping for self pushes others away. We live in a lonely, lonely, lonely world. We are surrounded by people, but in general, we are terribly lonely. And the more famous and the more successful we are, the truth is, the more lonely and alone and afraid we are. As a general rule, that's true. We're afraid somebody will take that from us and we'll lose it. The American dream traps us this way. Not the old American dream of, I can come here and work hard and my family can have a good life. The new American dream is that I can work hard and have it all for myself. You see, that's the difference there. Jesus was traveling through Samaria, stopped at a well. There was a woman in the middle of the day getting water when nobody else did because she was ashamed to be seen by the other women in the city. And Jesus talked to this Samaritan woman that generally no Jewish man would. And he offered her living water. A refreshment that lives in you and gives you life, peace, strength, and hope. Living water. But you can't live the dream that you've always lived, woman. Getting by the way you always have, it has to be let go. And the same is true for us. You see, God offers us living water. Through His Spirit, through His church, through the people that He sends around us for us to love, to be loved by. But we're caught in the futility of our thinking. We don't want to let go of the things we possess. We're afraid to lose them. We don't want to let go of our freedom, our independence to do as we please at any given moment. We want to be free just to pop up and shed ourselves of whatever responsibility. We don't want to be encumbered by anyone. We don't want to owe anybody. Because they might make demands on us, and we might be required to give up something that we don't want to. But Jesus Christ, we're given the power to live because He gives us a living water that gives us peace, strength, hope, courage, and the ability to live and prosper, even if all these things that we think are important are taken away from us. And they will be eventually. Everybody dies, and it's all going to be gone. But in Christ, we still have a full life in Him. So the question is, do we trust Him enough to go with that suggestion? Are we willing to let go of it all in order to have Him? Just as the woman is at the well. Just as the Romans were confronted by Paul when he came to them and said, having all this stuff isn't going to make you a good person or happy. There's only one peace, and that's in God. He calls you and He calls me. Now our invitation hymn is what? I don't remember. It didn't written down. But there is an invitation hymn. And as we sing, we're invited to make that very choice. To give up our self-will and our purpose, to submit to the things that God would have us to do, to give our wealth, our strength, and our courage to jobs that don't bless us with the physical things, with the financial things, with the status things. There are things that bring healing to those who are around us. Those are the things that God wants to draw us close to Him. And that's the offer this morning. You have the courage to trust Him. It gives life where there's been none. It gives hope and peace where we think there can't be hope and peace. And that's His offer to us today. Reach out to Jesus. Let's stand as we sing.